Ms. Palmer to start the debate.
Okay, can you all hear me? Cool. You good, Nick?
Yeah, we're just posting some of this.
The rich and powerful elite can afford to change themselves and better their life. They can afford expensive private surgery to fix their appearance to their liking. They can afford to pay for private tutors and private education to develop the necessary life skills they need. The world abandons anyone that is born with bad luck into a poor community or with a disability. We give these individuals a chance to improve their life, and we give them a place of acceptance in society. We would grant the ability to trade in 1 year of your life to improve one singular trait to your liking. However, you would have to be at least 18 years to do so, and on a maximum of 20 years can be traded up to 20 years. We also support that you have to prove that you are sound of mind and give voluntary permission to do so. We would establish a 1 to 2 month cool down period that prevents people from rushing into split of the moment decisions like after the heat of a breakup to ensure that they know the consequences and don't rush into this life choice. We bring you 3 points of today. Firstly, how this gives individuals choice and autonomy. Secondly, how this improves societal efficiency. And thirdly, a split point about how it increases diversity in society within the long run. So firstly, how do we establish choice and autonomy for the individual himself? We allow this decision for individuals. We allow the trade-off between improving the quality of your life and having like a short, fulfilling life, or having a long life that is full of suffering and pain that you don't feel fulfilled and you don't gain any satisfaction. We think that it is the ultimate choice of the individual itself to establish this trade-off for themselves. We would prefer individual autonomy. Firstly, we say that the individuals are understanding the choice that they're making. It is an important decision not to be taken lightly, but people are able to understand the consequences, mostly because like they're the ones who have been thinking about what types of traits that they want to change throughout their life. And like they're the ones that have thought about these skills and this one trait that they don't like about themselves for every day of their life. They also because it is their life and like it's we grant autonomy to individuals elsewhere in society, such as like the freedom of speech, freedoms of democracy, freedoms of media. It's a logical extension of autonomy that we already grant to individuals. The situation is analogous to like going to university, right? We allow people to go to tertiary institutions and like give up 3 years of their life to establish an education for themselves, just to develop a new skill set, develop a degree, and to gain improved intelligence. In fact, we actively encourage it. We tell people that it's the important thing to do to take the course to improve their well-being, even if it takes that amount of time to learn these skills. We think that like the extension of our policy is just the same method and mechanisms as going to university. We also enable those who like can't afford university or can't afford private surgery to be able to do this. Secondly, we tell you that it fixes the situation around the lottery of birth. We think that like when your personality, when your skills, and when your traits are only determined by like how you were born, by like the genetic predispositions and like influenced by the structures that you have access to, such as like what did your childhood look like, what were your families involved in, like how did your parents influence your upbringing. We tell you that when these traits, like for example, when you have a disposition to alcoholism because of something in your genes, or because you like are quick to temper and anger, that individual didn't choose that aspect of personality, and they should be granted the ability to like fix that part of themselves they really don't like. We say that it's fine to change anything about yourself as long as it like if we can prove that it's not harmful to your overall well-being, that we can prove that they have a better, long, fulfilling life because of it. We also think that it enables those who like can't go to university because they have to like stay home and work with their families, or like those who like can't pay so much money for expensive private surgery, or for like these other ways to change these same traits. Those who can't afford to spend millions of dollars, like the rich elite, can now just trade in 1 year of their life to change their appearance. And like this 1 year is much lower cost than spending so much money and so much time going through the most like the processes of surgery. We provide this opportunity to better yourself, to every poor community and every marginalized group in society. Thirdly, we think it like actually just benefits the individual. Yes, they may lose 2 or 3 of their life. However, a short, fulfilling life that is enriched will actually make you happy. And like the pursuit in life, like the goal of life is to enable the best version of yourself, and like it's a better alternative than spending 3 more years suffering, especially when that's at the elderly portion of your life. We say that like when you're born with a facial disfigurement, or like with a lisp, you'll be like relentlessly mocked and teased for your stutter, like, and eventually you like see yourself in the mirror and you see yourself on video, and that one trait, that one skill that you don't have is something that you begin to despise about yourself. It's something that like becomes a part of you, and it prevents you from straying into social interactions, or like from staying away from public speaking because you don't have the same appearances as everyone else on TV. We tell you that it's fine for that individual to exchange 1 year of their life if they can prevent 20 years of this suffering, of this immense pain and social exclusion that they should not be forced to endure. Finally, we tell you that we provide unique benefits to minority communities and disabled communities as well. Transgender individuals have to go to lengthy practices just to change their outward physical experience to express which gender they feel like they should have been born with. We say that there's no difference from spending 4 years and like going through the expensive process of getting a top surgery, or going like altering your biology to change your appearance. There's no difference between doing that and trading in 2 years of your life to not only have a quicker, expedient, not painful experience, but also like it enables the same extension that would have occurred naturally. We also benefit those born with disabilities. We say that like those born with facial scarring, or those born without like fine motor skills or the ability to speak properly, they can remove these disabilities from their environment. The opposing team rips away the opportunity for these people to change their life. So finally, how does this ensure like greater efficiency and productivity in society? Firstly, we tell you that your youngest years are like where you have the most potential. And like in this policy, you're going to be sacrificing your eldest years, the years where your body is like failing, where you're becoming weaker, and like where you have lost that energy, that vigor, that passion, that like the invigoration for what you were doing when you're young. You're least efficient and productive when you're 80 to 90 years old. These are the years of your life that you were trading away. They don't have the same benefits as when you were young. When you waste away your 20s retraining at university, or teaching yourself skills, trying to gain these degrees, we say that it's better for yourself to trade away your elderly years, and we advocate for a world in which you sacrifice the years where you're 91 to 95 to maximize the energy of your youth. We also tell you that it's critical that young people have skills like financial planning, like being able to cook proper nutritional meals, family budgeting from their 20s, rather than developing after like 10 years in the workforce and like when you're in your 40s. It's important that these young people know how to survive in the world, and it's likely that no one actually teaches them these skills. The school system it's not designed to teach practical skills to these children, and it's not designed for these individuals like who don't have like a functioning family and parents to teach them these skills. We grant them the ability to like magically improve their life by trading this 1 year when there aren't the same institutional structures for them to do so. We prioritize self-improvement and learning new skills because the process is quick and immediate and efficient. Therefore, at the end of this debate, societal efficiency improves, workers become experts at their chosen career paths because they have the greater ability to like innovate, create newer, greater quality products, and we develop business traits necessary to succeed, such as charisma and confidence. We benefit these individuals' life, we change their life, we are proud to propose.
Thanks, Travis. I now invite up the first negative speaker of Central North Island, Mia. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Okay. Side affirmative wants to risk a place of acceptance at the cost of buying into harmful social agendas that have allowed these people to feel neglected in the first place. We set a really dangerous precedent when we say it's okay to cut your life short for something that's not your inherent fault, or deeming of what skill, traits, and appearance should be necessary that are predicated on a society of inequality and superficiality. What do we stand for on our side of the house? We stand for the value of life over superficial societal standards, and we allow to break down this equality caused by this move to ensure crucial happiness and the value that we give to all of these people. What are our arguments in this debate today? 3 things. First of all, the social harms. Secondly, the devaluation of life, and a split at middle on the influence and pressure. So first of all, some rebuttal though. I'll be addressing mainly part of this in my substantive, but I'd like to address this point of individual autonomy. We question the idea whether this is actually a person's life when they're trading this in order to buy into a narrative not unique to themselves. We tell you that we can't actually have this individual autonomy when this is at the cost of a social agenda. You lose this individuality. On this whole point of a university mechanism, we think this largely falls into redundancy because there's this whole point of working hard and the meritocracy, which I'll be addressing into my substantive, and their points about social efficiency. But also importantly, on their point of minorities, we think it's incredibly problematic that SciDAF says it's okay to promote something that says, look, you as a minority need to actually change how you look at the cost of your own life, because that's not okay with society. Therefore, you can't look like this. You need to decrease your life in order to buy into this. Incredibly problematic. First of all, let's move into my substantive inequality. The whole social harms. So the world we currently live in is systematically controlled by social influences and expectations. Things such as racism, classism, and Eurocentrism dictate this visual social agenda, which is why we traditionally see like thin blonde white girls being like models and like figureheads for like global campaigns, rather than a dark-skinned woman from rural communities in Eastern Africa, which is an incredibly harmful narrative that perpetuates a really, really negative that you aren't good enough for society. Eurocentrism is digested incredibly through social media and advertisement and global examples. So within our side of the house, within their side of the house, what we're doing is placing these molds over people and saying that if we can get people becoming more successful, we're doing this through harmful social issues. And we don't actually get this because we have not mitigated these social issues enough in order to allow for this. So why is this dangerous? 3 things. First of all, it's really dangerous that sets a precedent that undermines meritocracy, which I'll be addressing as in a rebuttal, because you sort of have like these constantly available like traits to make you more productive. You're actually removing the ability of those who have worked hard. So actually you're not going to get these social efficiency because people are less incentivized to work harder, and like you're preventing thinking and skill development through experience, which we think is incredibly important to ensure that this is kept, because this sort of life experience cannot be bought and is undermined when you realize that people can easily achieve this. Secondly, you're pushing a really social harmful agenda at the cost of your own life, because rather than mitigating the harms of Eurocentrism or stigmatization, you're actually buying into these ideals at the cost of people's lives. When you accept that you're not going to let this change and you want people to do this, we'll see, as we already do, people buying into unrealistic beauty standards at the cost of their own life, which is incredibly problematic because of the fluctuality of these standards that changes over time, which means you're never actually going to reach like an end point of people to be satisfied. There's going to be a relentless drive for people to continually change themselves, which is going to lead to an ultimate loss of the longevity of and also the value of people's lives. Impacts of this. You get more and more people trying to attain these standards reserved for a really small minority that is eventually going to cause mass populist pressure for others to follow. So no one likes to feel like the outsider. Sort of consumerism in our world has made people constantly buy into the trends and pressure in order to feel as part of a collective, which is incredibly harmful for the world's majority that actually don't fit into this. So what are you doing? You're not actually solving these social issues. Side F buys into them. On our side of the house, we don't actually physically buy into these harmful social rhetorics at the highest cost. And we think it's really important to tell people that you do not have to change yourself or cut your life short because society tells you to. We think that the and integrity of human life is so important, which deteriorates under side F. Let's look at my second point, the devaluation of life. So life is like both in the physical years and the authentic experience within people's lives. As it stands, it's globally accepted that one of the most important things is the unique value and longevity of an individual's life. So let's look into the mechanism of why this is so damaging. I'll do this through two ways. First of all, through the individuals, and secondly, through society. Let's look at the individual. When you set a precedent that people can purchase their life, yeah, actually, I'll take your POI.
Millions of people live long, unfulfilling, suffering lives in disadvantaged areas, mostly just having the same experiences of racism time after time. Why shouldn't these people have the chance to live a shorter but more opportunistic life?
We don't think that this is an opportunistic life when we're telling people, when we're just like ignoring the fundamentals of issues of racism and saying like, look, if you've been like held by racist ideals, you can just change your skin color, therefore mitigating this. We think that's really harmful and not actually addressing any of the situations of racism and perpetuating it that you need to be like a white-skinned person in order to have a good life. That's really damaging, which continues under your side of the moot. So again, under my side of the point, this whole experience that someone has and like the whole thing that you have something to strive for, you're constantly improving and to be a better person, which is really integral for human development. This cannot be bought. And it's also, if we look at the mental health side of this as a part of the mechanism, there's a lack of purpose now because there's no point, as you know, that people can just purchase aspects that you prize really highly. There's no satisfaction, drive, or purpose because your sense of goals and your ideals have been completely devalued and changed. What are the effects of this? You get a loss of identity. Nothing now makes you special because this can all be bought. What you want is more people have this like, no one's able to be differentiated anymore. So you're going to feel detached from the society you're a part of because of this whole idea that you can buy interviews, which is incredibly damaging for people's sense of identity and lack of connectivity to society. So let's look at this point of society. So we think that society is going to like view life as currency and setting this precedent of humans becoming capital. Always knowing there's a better version of yourself perpetuates that no matter what you do, you're never going to achieve these harmful social narratives that means you have to like pay to have a better life. We no longer, what are the mechanisms of this? You no longer value individuals. Secondly, you're continually pressured for a shorter lifespan for standards. And thirdly, it's harmful in itself when life becomes currency because you're valuing ideals that have been like pushed upon you externally. Because what are the impacts of this and what do we actually get? We cannot actually allow people to risk human experience for something as superficial as a smaller nose or enhanced productivity. We can't tell people that buying into social narratives is the only way to have a good life. Changing your skin color is the only way to solve racism. We do not stand for that. So proud to oppose.
Thanks, Mia. I now invite up the second affirmative speaker from Waikato, Rob, to continue his team's case.
Mr. Speaker,
if the negating team is to have any chance in this debate, they have to first realize that what the world looks like now is a place where minorities can't change, a place where disfigured people can't change, a place where racism, where things like discrimination are unable to be changed by an individual, right? What we offer on our side of the house is choice. What we offer is to say, if there is something seriously wrong with the way you feel about yourself, not with the way society feels about you, but the way that you feel about yourself, you have the ability to change that. There's no external factors from society that are stopping you from doing this thing which you feel is holding you back. 3 points for the House today. Firstly, on choice and autonomy, how do we have a duty to provide this to people? Secondly, on societal efficiency, how this increases the amount that we're able to get done in society. Thirdly, on the devaluation of life in society. And fourthly, I'll split and talk to you about unrealistic beauty standards, how about inclusivity and diversity in the society that we live in. Firstly, let's talk about choice and autonomy, because here we offered you 6 mechanisms on how giving people choice, giving people freedom to express themselves, how they want to be seen, how they want to be viewed is vitally important. We told you how people understand this choice, they know what they're getting into, that it is like education, it is like university. What we heard in response was that it undermines working hard, it undermines meritocracy. We say to this that what you're going to experience in society is a fundamental change in the way people view themselves and a fundamental change in the way that society values things. It goes from something that you can't change, it goes from how educated you are, how well you're able to speak, into what you actually do, right? Because as we say, at the point where everyone is able to develop these skills, that everyone is able to promote themselves, to give themselves the ability to do all these things, you are now judged on what you do with these skills you have gained. You are judged on how you benefit society, how you benefit the people around you, the actions you take. You're no longer judged on your appearance. You're no longer judged on whether or not you got a tertiary education because of how your mother brought you up, because of your family situation. You're judged on what you do with those skills that you have acquired through trading them in. We didn't hear any response to how this is impacted, how the lottery of birth impacts how people live in today's society. But this is crucially important in today's debate because the lottery of birth makes life unfair for millions and millions of people. The lottery of birth dictates that your starting conditions will impact how you live the rest of your life, will impact how society sees you, changing the way that people view each other. Changing the way that people operate in society is how we're going to fix these issues like racism, is how we're going to fix these issues like minority inclusion. By giving the people the choice to shape themselves how they want, people can no longer be discriminated against personal traits. They say, this is how I want to be, you have to accept me like this. We see that this is going to increase diversity in society. Secondly, lastly on this, we talk about the need to change. The feeling that for trans people, they're unable to, often the process is difficult, that they want to make a change within themselves. And this also occurs in groups like the disabled, if they have significant physical impairments. I'll take you in a moment. We said that giving them this ability allows them to make the change for themselves, not because society is saying it to them, but because they want to make it themselves. Yes.
Sorry, how do you claim that you increase diversity when people are now buying into like narrow-minded social agendas that promote one ideal type of person?
Well, I'm going to talk about this a bit more in my split, but essentially it comes down to 2 outcomes, because the fact of the matter is that there will be more of an incentive to stand out, and that there will be a much wider framework for other standards of beauty to be promoted. So let's secondly talk about social efficiency, the second area of contention in today's debate. We told you that our most productive times are when we're young, when we're able to learn the most, when we have all this energy of youth, that our aged years are not as productive, and as a result we should be allowing people to get these skills earlier, which will be more productive. They'll be able to be more productive in society. We didn't hear any real response to this, nor did we hear much about how the practical skills learned in these youthful stages are vitally important to setting up people to have successful, profitable lives for the rest of their life, how workers will become more efficient, how gaining these skills at an early age, gaining these skills that you wouldn't necessarily have, that you wouldn't necessarily value at that early age, is going to increase society's output, that is going to increase the ability for everyone to enjoy goods, cheaper goods, at a more effective price. Lastly, the last area of clash I'd like to talk about is the devaluation of life. The point brought by the negative team here is that both society and the individual will devalue life. There'll be a lack of purpose, and that the views life goes down. We tell you, as I've already pointed out, that we change how we view ourselves to be more focused on the actions that we take. Our purpose comes from what we do with these skills that we've acquired, rather than just the situation we were born into. Society now views life as precious. It views life as being able to be utilized to its maximum potential. Its value increases rather than decreases. Lastly, then, let's talk about unrealistic beauty standards. People right now, as both sides of the House agree, have mental health issues hugely caused by the unreal Instagram models, the unreal comparisons that they're forced to make with other people in society. How do we change this? Well, we think there are going to be two key responses to what happens under our side of the House. There are going to be two key changes to the way society operates. Firstly, the first option is that people will be more diverse in their tastes or views. Well, why is this? Firstly, we think that there's much more of an incentive to stand out, to be different, to express yourself in a wide variety of ways. When you are able to achieve this in a very short space of time, there is an incentive on you to be different, to show yourself in a different way, and that you can shape that way to be whatever you want. You can shape that way to express yourself in whatever manner you want. Secondly, under this, we think that there's going to be a much wider framework for other standards of beauty to come through. Our current society, as both sides of the House agree, is single-mindedly focused on just one or two standards of beauty, seen in what clothing, makeup, other areas of things we provide. We allowed for a broader range of beliefs to be pushed by a broader range of individuals. By allowing people to make these choices, by allowing them to make these choices effectively and rapidly, we allow for this to be included in society. And secondly, even if, on the off chance that these standards, that these current modern beauty standards are still popular, they will no longer be unachievable. They'll no longer be unrealistic. The massive mental health harms of seeing something that you say you can never get to are massively decreased by actually you can get to that now. If that's really what you want to go for, then sure, you have the ability to go for that. You have the ability to achieve that. So what have I shown you today? I've shown you that we grant individuals choice and autonomy over their own lives, over their own appearances, over their own skills. Secondly, that we improve society as a whole by allowing people to create more output, by allowing people to upskill earlier. Thirdly, that we don't devalue life, we change its value to be about the actions that people are actually taking. And fourthly, we fix unrealistic beauty standards, increase mental health outcomes for the most vulnerable. Very proud to propose.
Thanks, Rob. I now welcome the second speaker of the negative team from the Central North Island, Merle.
Hi, just a heads up, when we offer points of information in the future, we'll be putting our hands up because we don't think all of our points are coming through. But yeah, anyways. Chair speakers. What the affirmative team presents today is the illusion of the choice because they fail to take into account trends. They fail to take into account sexism, racism. They fail to take into account literally every societal issue, every social standard that could possibly affect people's choices and how prevalent, how likely it is that the system will be abused. The point I bring today is how social inequalities abuse this power to change something about yourself by trading off a year of your life. However, before I do this, I'd like to address the two main arguments that we see at this point in the debate. The main argument we see is surrounding choice. The other team has argued largely that on their side of the house, they give choice. They are helping minorities because now minorities have this ability to better themselves. Disabled people can no longer have their disability. People who are suffering, trans people, for instance, can change a part of themselves to relieve dysphoria. So what we actually see on their side of the house is minorities have this ability to fix themselves only once they can change something about themselves, why rich elite or advantaged people who have been given everything they need to get by in life can change themselves to be an even better version of themselves because they're only given this single opportunity. So overall, what this means really is that on their side of the house, minorities are still disadvantaged. The rich elite that they keep saying they need to stop continue to be more advantaged, therefore they're benefiting the group they claim to care most about. They've also said that this system is like heavily regulated by the government. We still believe that it could be possibly it will definitely be subject to abuse by rich and powerful because it clearly comes down to what society deems right. And many societies will see things like social issues or will have inherent racism or such and will abuse this system as they see fit because they no longer see life as valuable, as Mia has shown at first. They've also said that choice, the reason for choosing, partially they said the choice like, oh, you no longer have to spend this time. They use the example of uni. Who wants to spend 3 years at uni? We think this is valuable time spent. We think a large part of being a person is the experiences you get. A lot of people enjoy going to university because of the time they get to spend there. And we think that a lot of the people they've been talking about who would benefit from tertiary education would far benefit from choosing other skills before that in order to lift themselves as people to be a better version of themselves. And they cannot afford to spend their single opportunity that they get offered under their side of the house on tertiary education, for instance. Their choice, they also started rattling off a long list of things a person can fix about themselves, and they can fix the lottery of their birth. And once again, under their model, there is a lot of things within a person that you can't necessarily change. And once again, minorities versus advantaged people, nobody wins. They've also stated largely
on that point,
it's largely about being able to choose and do what you want to do, but we don't, as we've explained, you don't actually have this choice because of the social standards and social pressures that are in place, and I will be going into that. The other main argument we've seen is like how you benefit society. They said that it doesn't matter that it undermines hard work because there is fundamental change in place that means that you are now judged on how you benefit society. This is incredibly wrong. Like, your life is now a currency, and that is incredibly dehumanizing. It is how much you can output, not your experience, not about you having a good time, about how you can make the most useful version of yourself. So how we are utilized, how we can be a better version of ourselves for society, how we can contribute to the workforce, rather than the experience we are having. They also stated sort of like under this whole society idea, like more opportunity of expression. So like a broader range of beliefs can be expressed. So first of all, we say societal standards, as Mia's explained. Second of all, we say, no, there are a lot of like social issues, a lot of racism is prevalent, a lot of these harmful ideas can actually be pushed under their side of the house and become a way of influencing how people choose this. Also, when it comes to appearance versus changing what skills you have, given you only have one shot, imagine what happens if people start going for expression, especially if with like trends in place, how harmful that could be for a person if they choose to change their skin color versus someone chooses to like have extreme knowledge of law and practically have a law degree, all because all these harmful societal standards and this agenda was quite important. So moving on to my point, I'll take you in a second, how societal inequalities abuse this power. Yes?
We told you in our model that you can repeat this policy up to 20 times and use 20 years of your life to change 20 different skills. How does this change your case?
Okay, how this changes my case is actually more harms are now achievable. Thank you very much. This really helps my point. What this means is that it becomes like life becomes even more devalued. So we see people changing rapidly for trends. We see people changing their entire appearance, how they appear racially, which creates like more racial divides. We see people who are minorities, finding it even harder to reach themselves to the same level as people who are already advantaged. So all the harms exist, but they're even more prevalent on your side of the house. Moving on. So the world as we see it under the status quo. There are countless social inequalities. Racism, sexism, homophobia, it's still in the system, whether you can see it or not. We see this with blatant discrimination. So we have police brutality, and we see this with microaggressions. So being denied a promotion within your workplace simply because of the color of your skin. All of these constant aspects of our society and have very real tangible harms on a person's well-being. Still, we are more socially progressive today than we were 30 years ago or even 10 years ago. What happens when we implement the affirmative team side of the house? We lose any sort of social progress we've worked towards as people with these because all of a sudden, anyone with socially backwards views are in a position to showcase themselves and their views through life trade-offs. A lot of these people also tend to be more advantaged in society, tend to be people with more wealth, tend to be people who aren't minorities. So we see these rich elite, socially backwards people, a lot of them owning corporations, now pushing these views and pressing for people to embrace them through media, through setting the standard by changing themselves and showcasing that are successful. And overall, what this means is that people who have spent their entire lives fighting are now presented an easy and societally accepted out. Why fight when you can lose for discrimination, lose for loss of poor well-being, and you can just quickly change yourself? So they don't make the trade-off for skills necessarily. We see people changing their skin color. We see people changing aspects of themselves, which are purely physical or incredibly superficial, all because they think they'll live an easier life, which they won't, because the rich can still skill themselves up, can still become the best version of themselves, and they remain in power. So this further disadvantages minorities through loss of diversity and acceptance, government and societal pushes in more corrupt places to change based on societal standards from social inequalities. People who have already used their people who still try to maintain themselves as well are going to be even more disadvantaged at that. So with all of this in mind, the moot must fall. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mel. I now invite up the third affirmative speaker from Waikato, Andrew.
Move this down again. Is that fine? Okay. Let's be crystal clear. For many, many people, a life of 80 or 90 years without being truly fulfilled and without the ability to achieve everything you want to achieve is an 80 or 90-year life that is not worth living. The world where the lottery of birth is one of the few determinants of your future outcomes leaves billions stranded, not able to achieve to their desire and not able to live the life that they deserve. The trade-off between life and aesthetic is the trade-off between life and achievement is one that many will want to make. Our side of the house was the one that allowed all people to live 50 years on equal footing if they so desire, rather than 80 years locked to the lowest echelons of possible achievement. When side negating tells you that these people, damned by the lottery of birth, should not have an opportunity to be on this equal footing, an opportunity to be in a position to fight back, just to stick it to the elite, they lose today's debate. What do I bring in my speech? I bring you 3 points of clash. Firstly, on the impact on the individual. Secondly, on the impact on society. And thirdly, on the impact to diversity. First, we're going to talk about the impact on the individual. Obviously, this is very important in this debate because at the point where you're giving up your own lifespan, the individual is one of the main stakeholders. We told you down the line, our side of the house granted individuals the choice to be free to determine the path they take, and this is very good. Side negating had a few main contentions here, and let's go through them now. The main
the most important one that they gave us is that people don't actually have a choice. That this is just playing into a social agenda, and people are being forced to change to fit narratives. We have three responses to this. Firstly, that right now in the status quo, people are already trying to change to fit narratives, but to no avail. People are desperately trying to get out of the lottery of birth that they have been damned to, and this is something that many of them find it incredibly hard to do under the status quo, and not something that you on side opposition support. On our side, we provide them a way to get on equal footing with the elite that controls these social agendas, the elite that sets these agendas. We give minorities a way to get up there too. We put everyone on equal footing, and at that point, everything is far more fair. Secondly, at the point the elite are no longer separate from like lower classes in our world, we can create a far more equal world at the point where people are willing to do this. Lastly, lastly on the idea that, like, for example, minority groups would just give up their own individuality for this, we know that many minority groups would rather enhance themselves to become more intelligent, to become like stronger themselves than conform to the majority. It's not like everyone's going to change themselves to become old white men. That's just not going to happen, no matter how much side negating thinks it might. Okay, what else do they say? They said that people might now undervalue life on our side of the house. We tell you, look, it's not undervaluing. Firstly, it's ultimately still a choice. People want to do these things. Life is not necessarily valuable because of its length. It is an 80-year life of suffering is far worse than a 50-year life of success where you're on equal footing and you can attempt the opportunities that you want to achieve. This is something that side negating utterly didn't want to engage with. They would rather people just like leave these like opportunities and the chance to be equal behind, the chance to live a shorter but far more fulfilling life behind, just so that we don't maybe appease the elite a little bit, even if we don't. Look, we told you on our side that at the end of this point, it is ultimately still a choice. It's one they've thought through, it's a decision they're sound on, and it is something that makes the world far more fair. Okay, secondly, then we're going to talk about the impact on society. Again, this is very important in this debate because what this change represents is a major societal shift that will have lasting consequences. We told you that our side of the house was the side that ensured a better, fairer, and more productive society. Side negating gave us a few main contentions here. Firstly, that this would undermine meritocracy, that people are less incentivized to work hard. Look, we tell you right now, the meritocracy is a medium for the elite to gain more power. Under a meritocratic system, those who are in the elite, they're the ones with the most opportunity, the most access to schooling, the most access to resources. Undermining the current meritocracy as it stands today isn't necessarily bad. In fact, it is something that would actually make the world a lot fairer. It is something that our side of the house sees, and it is something that we change to become far more fair, a far better world. We told you that you would now be judged, people would now be judged not just because of like the skills that they attained through the lottery of birth, but now through their actual contributions to society. It was not good enough for them to just tell us on side negating that this would, it might make you a currency. Look, no, that's not true. It makes you a beneficial member of society. It makes society one of innovation and success. You are not a commodity to society. You're just helping society. That is a fundamental difference here. Okay, they also told us that people might buy into, say, unrealistic standards. But look, people already buy into unrealistic standards. At the point all of these things are possible, at the point where you can change yourself, we make A, standards possible, and B, we make standards far more diverse to the point where they're not limited to just the rich people setting the standards. We're the side that ensures beauty becomes broader, but also more available. I'll take a POI now.
Hi, so how do you expect minorities to reach the same level as these rich elite if they start off at a much lower societal standing initially than these people who are already so much more advantaged?
That's literally the entire like point of this motion. We're literally giving people the ability to like gain new skills instantly, become smarter, become more intelligent to the level of like elites that have historically had more opportunity. Okay, they also told us that, for example, this might undermine progressive change. Look, we tell you that's not true. It makes minorities stronger. It makes them more acceptable at the point that change, that like being different, being changed is more normalized in society at the point where it's something that is far, far better and not something that is just strange and locked to like a very minority group of people. Lastly, they told us that we might decrease the value of life in society. Again, we told that that's not necessarily a problem. While we may be decreasing somewhat the value of a long life, we're also increasing the value of a fulfilling life. And that is a life that many, many people will find far better. Living 80 years in suffering, you will find that many people do not like as much as living 50 years in a position of relative equality, a position where you can gain success. Last, we're going to talk about the impact on diversity very quickly. We were pretty clear in our case and in our split that this would incentivize people to stand out more and differentiate themselves from the crowd. The contention we heard from side negating was just that this would make nobody individual. It would make people want to conform. Look, we tell you that at the point where many people can be whatever they want, there is an incentive to stand out. At the point where people are able to change themselves in any way they see fit, there is an incentive to be different from the majority. There's an incentive to create a more diverse society. If 1 million people buy the same lottery ticket numbers, you're not going to pick the same numbers. Similarly here, you're not just going to pick the same life settings as everybody else. We see a far more diverse world. At the end of this debate, we give people a choice between a fulfilling life or a long life, and the freedom to rid themselves from the chains that they've been locked to since birth. We're very, very proud to affirm.
Thanks, Andrew. I now invite up the third negative speaker of Central North Island, Leah.
Just a second. Without life, we have nothing. Least of all, any reasons to have, or indeed even the ability to dream, set goals, or to improve ourselves. Neg would suggest that short-term gain, an instant improvement in your skills, your traits, and your appearance, the worth of which is defined by corporate powers, employers, media's historic power struggles. Neg would suggest that our very existence is worth less than our ideals that have been planted in our heads with ulterior motives. Neg would literally prefer that minorities don't exist. On side F, we value the natural human experience, very, very proud to propose. I'll be asking 3 questions today. How does the affirmative teams model affect the world's current state of inequality? How would the affirmative teams model affect overall human happiness? And how would the affirmative teams model promote the idea of autonomy in people? So firstly, a lot of space in this debate today has been taken up by the idea of inequality. Indeed, AF immediately came up framing their model as being an equalizer, so leveling the playing field that we are all born into, running under the premise that the rich and powerful can afford to improve themselves. So apparently this is a beneficial opportunity for the more disadvantaged among us. So I'll look at this in a couple of ways, but first I'll look at it simply. Let's look at it in terms of poverty. So people, even with this ability, are still starting at different degrees of poverty according to their upbringing, etc. What happens on their side of the house is that people that are disadvantaged in this way literally are encouraged to give up a portion of their lives, ramifications of which Mia discussed in our first speech, in order to catch up in some way. And even then, more advantaged people still have this opportunity basically to build on top of this. So what the affirmative team has done in the end is literally nothing except encourage the idea that your life is worth less than the money you own. So this is just completely dehumanizing every single human completely dehumanizing the human experience. Now I'll move on to how this affects minorities.
So basically what we as the negating team suggested would happen is that existing harmful ideas would be exacerbated as it becomes more plausible and easier for people to conform to social ideas that are basically pressed onto them from various powers, such as if we look at particular beauty standards, many beauty standards exist because of like historic oppression, etc. F literally suggested that if you are not perfect in some way in your eyes, if you feel targeted because of racism or self-conscious because of a facial deformity, I'm literally taking these words out of your mouth, you can make yourself into your ideal. So as Paul explained, you can never actually achieve an equal footing because this opportunity is just another addition to privilege you may or may not have. But what they're also suggesting is that if you are not, for example, like if you're not white or if you are disabled, you literally don't deserve to live or to exist in the space that you currently. They're not suggesting that anyone needs to learn to be tolerant of others or learn to accept others' worth for more than just their traits, their abilities, or the way that they look. What they're suggesting is that erasure of culture is literally reasonable.
On that point,
a form of like cultural genocide is reasonable, which we think is absolutely abhorrent. We think this absolutely goes against anything that a person with power should be standing for. We think that people that currently feel as though they don't completely fit into society absolutely have every right to be there. We thought this was absolutely abhorrent. Inequality is better on our side of the house. And just on top of that, I'll discuss basically their response, which was that, for example, things like beauty standards will become more diverse because there's more incentive to stand out. And we just absolutely think that this is not the case. The whole reason that people want to change is to fit an ideal that someone else has pressed upon them. We don't think that people will want to diversify, and beauty standards will in fact narrow because people now have the ability to make more things. I'll take you in a second. Secondly, I'll take you now. Yeah.
We told you time and time again that many disadvantaged people would rather live 50 years of a fulfilling life than 80 years stuck in the same disadvantaged state. Why is that not true on your side of the house?
I'll be addressing that in my next point. So in terms of which side promotes human happiness the most. So side after day has been talking a lot about a fulfilling life, but we'd basically like to discuss, for whom is this life fulfilling? Because at the stage when, at their best, everyone has the opportunity to do anything, is what is making you happy, basically, or fulfilling your ideas in society, is basically, if everyone has the same opportunities, which is taking them at their best, everyone can basically become the same thing. And we'd like to emphasize, as Mia at first began, that our self-worth is really inherently tied to the work that we put into our original thought, and that something simply doesn't have the same form of value. They stated that meritocracy was a bad thing. We feel like merit-based, we feel like people should be judged based on the work that they can put into things when that's relevant. And onto this
about meritocracy,
efficiency, all we see on side F is cogs basically in a big machine. So we're seeing no originality of thought, no promotion of like a normal human experience. We're just seeing that all people are worth is what they provide to society in the form of the way that they work.
About the human experience.
To suggest that people that are older don't deserve to live simply because they're no longer as present as much worth, or what the affirmative team judges worth, to society. And this leads me on to my third point about autonomy. So this is a principal point from the team, basically saying that that people should have the right to choose whether or not this happens. As I believe Mia said, you're basically trading in your life to buy into a narrative that isn't authentic to you, because it's a result of you being pressured by other parts of society. You're being convinced that your life is so awful that you literally can't even improve your situation in any other way. So you've been convinced that something is seriously so wrong with you that you're literally trading in your life for it. And we think that this is firstly, in suggesting that you can change yourself in this way, this is an awful way to make people feel. And secondly, we think it sets a really, really terrible precedent. On-site affirming apparently being fulfilled means being able to change your race if you so choose, means existing to please the corporate powers that be. It means living to produce things for your society and not living for your own human happiness. Proud to affirm.
Thanks, Leah. I now invite back up the negative teen Central North Island, Mia, to give the reply.
Thank you. We think it's incredibly demeaning for Side F to claim diversity and the value of human life when they buy into harmful social agenda at the cost of people's lives and tell people that they can solve issues of racism, solve issues of classism, and solve the things that have made them minorities by having to buy and change their life to cut it short in order to buy into these ideals. Not only do you not prevent these incredibly damaging concepts, you foster a culture and a society that allows for its prevalence. Because this isn't about social output, it's about whether or not society values human life of all individuals. Side F destructs this. 3 points of clash in our debate today. Firstly, inequality. Secondly, the value of life. And thirdly, who benefits the individuals. Let's look at this inequality point where I'll largely target this around minorities and this whole ideas of classism. So Side F came out and said, like, look, it's an equalizer. We're providing everyone like really great opportunities to be on the side, for everyone to be on the side, the same playing field, sorry. Not only is this incredibly damaging, because this whole idea of a same playing field is at the destruction of minorities and their like cultural and ethnical heritage. This whole like same playing field is traditionally like Eurocentric based approaches and things that have been perpetuated within our society. Not only is this, even if we look at this whole idea of an equalizer, we don't get this because people are already born with inequality. They use this whole idea of the lottery of life. Okay, then people have to like comparatively buy more and more years of their life in order to catch up to this. This is incredibly problematic, and we're telling people that they have to purchase more years of their life in order to get to this equal playing field. You can't get this. Under our side of the house, we tell that it's okay to not buy into social narratives at the cost of your own life. We tell you that it's okay, and it's very, very important that we don't allow people to ignore issues of classism, racism, simply by washing over it and physically buying into it. Incredibly proud to support this point. Secondly, on the value of life, we think it's really damaging when we tell people that the whole idea of a fulfilling life is whether or not you achieve the social agenda or not. Because a value of life isn't what society dictates. We think Side F have completely mischaracterized what actually leads to a fulfilling life. It's not necessarily what society dictates, but whether or not you yourself and the authenticity and experience you get in your life is fulfilling for you. What we did on our side of the house is we told you that we prioritize this, and we're not actually making, like, putting on a pedestal different like harmful social narratives over people's life. We're not making life a currency under our side of the house of which to buy into this perpetuation of harmful ideas. We're pushing positive rhetoric without buying into negative ones. Thirdly, on who benefits individuals, we had this whole idea of choice. We had this whole idea that people have the ability to change themselves and why this is so important. Not only did we tell you down the line how actually this isn't a choice because of the systematic oppression within society and corporations that dictate who you have to be, but actually that even in their best case scenario that everyone's free, we don't think it's okay for Side F to promote narrow-minded social agendas, because that's actually not individualism. That's actually not achieving any benefits towards the individual when you're saying like you're not good enough as you are. You need to actually detract physically from who you are in order to buy into what we as society tell you to do. So under our side of the house, we're giving people positive rhetoric and images, and we're not saying that you have to change entirely who you are and solving, like, washing over concepts. We're diagnosing these, and we're allowing people to feel comforted by the fact that they themselves, as unique individuals, have been respected, rather than washing over this. So, so proud to oppose.
Thanks, Mia. I now invite up the leader of the affirmative team, Andrew, to conclude the debate.
Sorry, Travis?
It's actually Travis.
Yeah, sorry, Travis.
Okay. In a society where everyone is on equal footing with one another and there are no longer economic and social divides, we embrace this utopian world. This policy ensures everyone has the same opportunity as everyone else. This policy enables minorities to gain education, to gain charisma, to gain confidence, and achieve the same levels of prosperity in life as their rich companions. There are 3 points of clash in today's debate. Firstly, do we ensure choice and autonomy for these individuals? Secondly, do we benefit these individuals or do we harm them? Thirdly, what is the social messaging of this policy? Firstly, on choice and autonomy, which was widely unresponded to by the opposing team. We told you that regardless of societal standards, they should be given the same opportunities as the rich and elite, and by exasperating unrealistic standards, like an unrealistic perfect beauty standards, you never allow these minorities to achieve the same things in life. By allowing them to make the change for themselves, you don't have to be dictated by the societal pressures anymore. And secondly, when you have a lottery of birth, where the sole dictatement of success is randomized and you have to be forced into these institutional barriers to entry with racism that is randomly assorted at birth, we think that you should provide the opportunity to change this if you can do so. Prevent this randomness from ever occurring again. So, secondly, what is the benefit to the actual individuals themselves? We told you that firstly, it enables them to fix traits that they have despised for their entire life, which ensures happiness and prosperity within their life. We told you that if someone has a genetic predisposition to violence or to alcoholism or to disease, they don't want to live with that trait and that personality. They want to ensure that they don't harm the people around them. They want to ensure a better life for themselves. We fix someone with severe facial burns that cause them excruciating pain every day. This is a more impactful benefit than minor mitigatory social stigma harms to these individuals. Reducing pain and suffering actually makes people happy. They told you that there's only one opportunity to change. We rejected this in our model by saying that you have up to 20 years to trade in. You can change multiple traits about themselves. We think it's a good thing to change the opportunities presented to minorities, and that this loss of 10 years has no real impact. So finally, what is the social messaging around this debate, and how does it frame the course of who wins? They told you that it ensures a system of meritocracy. We have a few responses to this. Firstly, we think that the rich elite determine the characteristics on which merit is based, and under their opposing world, it's really harmful to minorities anyway. So we don't embrace the system of meritocracy. We don't think it's a good thing because it doesn't value inclusivity, but also that the barriers to achieving merit are now removed because you can now just develop these skills really quickly and really easily, which means that you no longer bar happiness and bar economic prosperity to those with disabilities because they can now be able-bodied people who can function in society. We also told you that life isn't devalued because it's judged on actions, judged on what you do with these skills after you make the change. It is no longer about pursuing the appearances because now everyone can look as beautiful as they wish to be. Finally, on unrealistic beauty standards, we told you firstly, there's an incentive to stand out because people still want to differentiate themselves. And secondly, these communities aren't going to immediately change themselves. The Black communities are not going to want to throw away their culture, this heritage that they've had for 3 generations, they like who they are. It's just that they want to remove these like institutional barriers and like these poverty barriers that they can't control. Finally, we told you that like beauty is not just one thing. It's not one form. It's like personal to every individual. But lastly, that these beauty standards just aren't they aren't unattainable anymore. Like you reduce the mental like stigma of failure to have these standards when you can actually attain them on our side of the house. At the end of this debate, our policy is designed to protect the minorities. It is not cultural genocide. It is enabling them to lead better lives. The loss of like a couple years of old age is not comparable to the gains that we gain invigorating our youth, ensuring their passions, proud to propose.
Thanks, Travis, and thanks both teams for the debate.